Hi there, I'm Janet Haines. You may recall some months ago that I had a meeting with you with PermaJet, and we looked at papers and printing, etc. And today we want to build on that, and we want to talk more about printing and how you can use those prints. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk to you about bookmaking, which is what I do. And then I'm going to introduce you in a moment to my colleague Martin, and he does a lot of galleries, home galleries, which are beautiful. And then we're going to talk about some innovative products which PermaJet sell as well. So first of all, you need to print, because printing is the way that we get our pictures out there. We get them on our walls, in our books, for people to see and enjoy. And it's really important that an image, in my book anyway, and I think Martin's as well, isn't finished until we get it into print form. So welcome, Martin Addison. It's delightful to have you with me today. And I don't think there's anybody that does printing any better than you. So over to you.
Thank you, Janet, for that nice introduction. I've been a photographer for about 60 years now, and non-stop, and it's played an enormous part in my life, and a very positive part in my life. And I think there are several points in the process of photography where you can have a creative hit, and it is the creative piece of photography which really appeals to me and what I enjoy the most, and the reason I do it really. The first big hit is of course taking the photograph, and I just like the time when I'm somewhere, I'm concentrating on the picture, nothing else in my mind, totally focused on what's happening, what's in front of me. I don't look at the back of the camera, I simply take pictures over and over again. I don't go with any preconceived ideas. I have no idea what I'm going to do with a photograph. At that point, I'm simply looking at getting a photograph which I think is what I want, looking at texture, composition, design, lighting, and so on. When I get it back, I'll then think about processing it. Sometimes that process is done within a few days, sometimes I leave it a year or two, or sometimes even longer. I have a lot of photographs. But that's the second creative point for me, because I can do a lot with a picture. My pictures are very straightforward insofar as I don't do blending, I don't do putting pictures together very much. So I'm working in Lightroom to try and pull out the tones, but sometimes I will completely change a picture within Lightroom from what I took, and you will see some of those later on. The next creative point is printing it, because like Janet said, I think a picture isn't finished until it's printed. And there's no greater joy than seeing a print coming out of my printer. In the same way as in darkroom days, you could see the picture coming out of the developer, or in my case, more often, it was coming out of the color processor. So that's another creative aspect. And it's also the point where I start thinking about what paper I'm going to use. Because PermaJet have got a big range of fabulous papers, everything from textured art to high gloss. And one picture which will look good on gloss won't look good on matte. So it is a good choice to be made. So I use a swatch very often just to have a look at different ones to give me some ideas. Or sometimes I know immediately what paper I'll print on. You will hear about some of my favorite papers a little later on. Having printed it, I then obviously mount it. And then what do I do with it? Well, I've got a lot of pictures on my wall, as you will see later on. So very often I'll put them on the wall. But even if you don't have that, you can put them on a shelf or on mantelpiece, or just leave them around the house and look at them for a while. And I like putting things into panels too. I'm a member of the fellowship board, the RPS, and so I look at panels regularly, but I also have always made panels. I think in series, so I don't tend to think in single pictures. I tend to think in 2s, 3s, 9s, 10s. What picture will go with something else? And it also applies to my audiovisual work, where one picture leads into another. And I think that's all about one set of images rather than a single picture. So I think at this point I'll hand you back to Janet.
Hi, thanks Martin, thanks for that. I think that's really interesting, because where Martin doesn't make the decision about which paper to put it on until he's ready to print, for me, I'm actually making that decision during my workflow. Because I'm a composite worker, I will start to think, do I want this on this paper or that paper? Because I actually slightly process them differently, because I know the characteristics of the papers that I use. And so it's quite important to understand. I always reckon that you need 3, max 4 papers on your shelf. So you need to choose those 4 quite carefully, depending on the type of work that you do. But you get to know those papers and you get to know how you can use them. And I found that quite a distinct benefit when I'm producing really high quality prints. So as I've moved into making books, I've had to consider those papers a little differently. So let's go on and start to look at how I do and what I do when I make my photographs into books. First, let's have a little look at the tools you need to make books. So on screen now, you should see a few of the tools that I have. They're the sort of things most of us have got in our craft boxes and shouldn't give you much problems. You know, rulers, glue, knives, etc. The thing that I use is double-sided tape, which you can see there, and I actually use the acid-free one. It is worth buying the acid-free double-sided tape because it doesn't leave the marks on it like normal sellotape does. At the back there you can see some bulldog clips, and those are useful just for holding the book together while glue's set and things like that. I'm not actually going to give you a workshop on doing the books today, but what I am going to show you is some that I've made previously. This is the first book I made. It's called Aspects, and it's made with ordinary paper, art paper in fact, cartridge art paper, and just really as an experiment to make a little book. And here you can see I've stuck the pictures onto the art paper, and it's called a Concertina Book. And the reason for that is because it will actually stand up, which is quite nice because you can stand them on a windowsill or whatever. And it's a neat, easy little book. You could put a lot more pages into it if you wished, and it's just cardboard covered with nice coverings, and really you've just got a nice little neat book. This was the next one I went on to, Oil on Water. And again, I have made it with paper and put my prints into it. So this is printed on PermaJet's matte paper. But on this occasion, I've printed enough images to go both sides of it so I can turn it round. So you can see that I've printed them and stuck them in. So very simple to make, very easy to do. This next little one I'm going on to is nothing more than images that my daughter-in-law has sent me via WhatsApp of my granddaughter. Now here, I'm printing it onto PermaJet's rag double-sided paper. And I have to say, it was amazing. It was a really, really good thing. It enabled me to have it double-sided, as you can see, so my concertinas work both sides, but it's actually printed on the page, and it gives you a very, very nice finish, very nice indeed. And it's just made a nice, neat little book that I can have out. But I didn't get it right first time using the double-sided paper. So when you make a book like this, they're actually obviously pieces of paper A4 that have been cut down, and you join them. So I'm using the joining of the tape that I talked about earlier down those center pieces there to join it. And you have to keep that join in the right place on both sides of the paper. So I made myself a little piece of template, as you can see, on an A4 sheet of paper. And I now make sure that I flip my template in Photoshop when I'm doing this to keep my pages correct, keeping that border to one side, and then it works. So don't waste paper like I did the first time. Make yourself a template. Next one we're going on to is called a Japanese stitched book, for the obvious reason that the edge is stitched to hold it all together. You do need a few more tools for this and a few more things, so any threads that you like to choose is fine. I quite like that thick red one. Then I've got this little machine that punches the holes in things, and that little machine has heads of different size holes, so depending on how thick your cord is, you choose a different size hole maker. And then of course you need a big strong needle to actually do the threading through. I've made myself a template to remind myself how to do the actual threading, to keep that in order. But let me show you the inside, because that's what we're really here to look at. This is printed on double-sided paper from PermaJet, and first of all, the first couple of pages are on the matte paper. I really liked this. I mean, I actually quite like matte papers anyway, so I guess I was always going to have a preference for that one. But then we move on to the oyster paper. So this is the double-sided oyster. So you can see those two pages have got a little bit of gloss on them because it is the oyster. It works very well for bookmaking, I have to say. And then these last few pages, I'm using the luster double-sided paper, and again it's got this slight luster onto it, and it works well. It folds well, it creases well, it works well for a book. So those are the pages, the papers that I use. If I was making another book for myself, because this obviously was for demonstration, I would probably and possibly use the rag. That was my favorite one. But you may have a different favourite. That's absolutely fine. And then when you get to the covers of these books, you can choose that particular one. The Dutch Flowers isn't a particularly hard cover. It's what I would call a lightweight card. And that one punches quite well with the holes. If I made a mistake, it was buying a cheap hole maker. I didn't know whether I was going to get into this or not. And so I was a cheapskate and I bought a cheap one. And I think I'm going to go back and buy myself a better cutter, a stronger and better cutter, so that I can get through card more easily. So that's just a little hint for you if you really feel that you're struggling a bit. But let's have a little look at the different papers that you can use to cover the books with. Here I'm showing you some papers that I've bought, special book covering papers. They are quite tough. You buy them on the roll, so they don't tear, they're quite flexible. There's lovely designs and colours and textures. And I'm just showing you two here that I've bought, ones that you've seen little books already made with today, and different textures, different colours, just because I like having a bit of a change. But here's something else that I've done, and I'm sure it won't be any surprise to you when you think about where I might have got these from, but these are just ordinary wallpaper cuttings. And I've gone along and I've decided, oh, that would make quite a nice book cover, and it needs to be fairly heavyweight paper, but I like these papers and they work well for covering books, and that one I particularly like. And I think I'd even like it in my lounge, actually. But it makes a lovely book cover, that's for certain. So that's the coverings. And then the next type of book that I went on to make is called a lay flat book. And this is the first one that I made, called Inside My Head. And the book itself opens much more like a normal book, in so much that you have pages that you turn. So it's not concertina, etc. It's just laying flat like a normal book does. I used PermaJet Portrait White paper for this, which is a paper I like very much. However, it is quite a heavyweight art paper. And one of the things that I discovered was that it doesn't fold quite as well as lighter weight papers. So therefore my fold between the pages wasn't so good, but I am printing direct onto the paper, so I get a really nice result in terms of the colour. You can also see how I stick the pages together here. So it's actually two pages stuck together, again using the double-sided tape. So it gives a great result. I mean, I love portrait white paper, I really do. But for using it for the book, maybe it was, as I said before, a little bit heavy to fold and manipulate into the book. In preparation for the book, I used, for this particular one, I used A3 plus. I'm printing 4 to a page and then splitting the page in half horizontally to give me my 2 to a page when I actually make the book. I was quite pleased with the result. You know, it's still a very pleasing little book, but as a first, I made 1 or 2 little, not mistakes, but I learned from it, as we all do when we're going along. So it will sit on in my house and people will pick it up and they will enjoy it. And they probably won't even notice the things that I perceive as being small problems with it. I included some text to make it a little bit more interesting. And the outside, if you're interested, is a piece of silk that I actually printed using silk screen printing. But you can cover it in whatever you like. So that was my first run into flat books, open flat books. So then I thought, okay, for this particular exercise that we're doing today in showing you the papers, I asked Martin for some images. So he sent me along some prints. He's used A3 paper, 4 images to a page, as you can see here. And one of the interesting things about this is that Martin actually has printed them on titanium luster. Now, this is a paper that particularly suits bookmaking, and Martin's images in particular. They look fantastic on it. I mean, I really am one of Martin's #1 fans. So, you know, from my point of view, it's going to be a good success anyway. He gave me a running order, a sheet here that you can see. And one of the things that I noticed was one of them is a different ratio. So I had to think about that when I was making the book, because was this going to not align properly as I cut them and made them into a book? It's usually better if all your images are the same ratio, but it worked okay. So let's go on and look at the actual book that I made. And when we get to that page, you'll see what I did with it. But first, here is how I cut the pages up. So I've taken his A3 page, I've cut it in half horizontally, and I've folded it. And the fold is now a tidy fold because titanium luster is a lighter weight paper, and it folded sharply, unlike the heavier weight portrait white that I used earlier. So I was much happier with this actual folding and preparation of the book. I could already see that I was going to have a bigger success. From my point of view, technically, it was going to be a better result. So inside the book, first of all, I covered it, look, with one of those offcuts of paper, and I've put a ribbon around this one, which is just a little bit of nice thing to do. And I've got some magnetic tags that I use to fasten that with. So another lay flat book. Martin's done a little bit of words at the front there to explain what the book is about and how he's created these images a little bit. And they are some of his wacky, wonderful, creative stuff. And I love it. I mean, I just love his work anyway, but I love the colours and the vibrancy that we've created in this book by using the titanium luster. And it's really interesting to note that on an image like this, where we've got some very delicate colours, it has still printed extremely well. And yet we turn over the page and here we've got some mono printing. And again, titanium luster works well for that as well. So it really is a more versatile paper than you might believe. Here's the image that was perhaps going to cause me the problem, but it didn't. And now we've gone on to my very, very favourite one of all. I've given a little thumbs up there because I love this particular image, and I love the little panel that he's given us at the side there, and you can see the sheen on the paper. As I say, it's just a superb paper. It's not one that I've used masses of times, but I'm really getting into it and I really like it. It takes such a variety of colours, and it holds the colours exceptionally well. Colours that you might think are going to be out of gamut, like the purples and the bright pinks, it holds and reproduces really accurately. And yet, as I said earlier, it works well, equally well for monos as well. I've actually seen landscapes, particularly seascapes, done on this paper. And again, it works extremely well for the seascapes. It seems to give that luster to the sea that we see with our naked eye and we experience in life. So there we are. There's another lay flat book. So the whole reason for doing books, from my point of view, is it gets my pictures out of my computer onto the paper in a way that other people can enjoy. I've got them for keeps, you know. My kids can have them if they want them when I die. And in the meantime, they'll be hanging around in the house and other people can pick them up and enjoy them if they wish to. I'm not imposing them on them, but they love seeing them. I find my visitors go, oh, you've got a new book, and they'll pick it up and have a look. So do think about making books. The process of making books is not difficult. It's just a few craft skills. And it adds to the pleasure, actually. It's sort of one step further than printing. Oh, now I've had the pleasure that we talked about earlier from printing. Now I'm going to make it into a book. So it gives me this added pleasure. So for Martin, his added pleasure is putting his images onto the wall. So let's now see what Martin does in the way of making galleries in his house.
I feel passionately that the place for photographs is on the wall, where we can enjoy them and not hidden away on our computers. I have a lot of photographs on my wall, 70 framed prints in all, and I enjoy seeing them and occasionally changing them for something new. Let me show you around my home. This first video shows the hallway, so anyone visiting is left in no doubt that there's a photographer in the house. In the hallway, I've used modern white frames, all square and about 9 inches in size, and I've grouped them in sets of 9 on a theme, as you can see here. Moving on down the hall, I have some photographs from the polar regions. These are A3 prints in a 40 by 50 mount, and some more A3 prints just round the corner. In the lounge, we have some larger frames, all silver, and these are rock patterns from northern Spain. Plus a couple of abstracts just on the other wall. We also have a few frames in the kitchen, which in this case feature panels. And naturally, we have some in the toilet, 6 in all. I'm sure you have pictures in your toilet too. Looking at the frames individually, this is one of the silver ones, which is in the lounge. And the next one is a black one. Ideally, all the frames would be identical, but they were bought over a number of years for various reasons. The simple white frames were bought specially for the hall, and I think look great in sets of 9. All the frames are easily opened by clips on the back, and they make changing the image very easy, as you can see here. I undo the clips on the back, remove the existing print, put the new print in, and close the clips again. Now it's ready to go back on the wall. There we are. Another way of displaying prints is to hang them on the wall. This is a temporary display which I used for an Open Studios event. So they're hanging from a curtain pole with strips of ribbon and small clips to attach the prints. It's a good way to show a whole lot for a short period. This is a wider view of the display which I had for the Open Studios event, showing cards and books. Turning to the papers I've used for the prints. For small prints like this, I used Matte Plus, as I find this is a really good for this size and for light, delicate prints. It's also a very economical paper to use, which is very useful when you're printing a lot. For stronger images like this, I use Oyster. Again, this is one of the cheaper papers, perfect for those images where the color rendition and the brightness is important. Moving on to some individual prints, I chose Distinction to print this polar bear on. Distinction is a superb paper, which is ideal when you want really sparkling and clean colors. I use Distinction a lot for photographs with strong colors and when I want to make A3 size prints like this one. For a more subtle image like this one, I often use Portrait White, which is lovely for soft tones and delicate colors. It's a favorite paper for the more gentle images. It's got a very light texture and bright base, and it's not just for portraits, although it is called that. An alternative would have been one of the art papers. Now for a very different paper. Titanium Luster has a metallic look, and I find it really good for my powerful abstracts, which have vivid colours. It's not an everyday paper like Oyster, and not suitable for everything, but with the right picture, it really sparkles. It's also very good for black and white. So here's a few other pictures which I printed on Titanium Luster. They all have very high contrast and very strong colours, and I think it really works well. It reflects the image quite beautifully. This next one is a series of images I made from an old broken signpost. Now these are bubbles, and again, the high contrast impression of these works very well. I also make greetings cards and printed this one for last Christmas, and I used Titanium Luster because it's the ideal paper for this. This one just had to use that paper. Let me show you a few other cards. All these are printed on Matte Plus, which is my sort of go-to paper for cards. So some of them have family on, others have landscapes, animals, whatever I feel like at the time. Some of these are for Christmas, some are for birthdays, some can be used for sympathy, and I make them all in Lightroom in the print module. And it's very easy. I make a few templates and I reuse those templates time and time again. Here's a few other cards I've made. I've also made some zigzag cards. So these are great fun. So I'm going to hand back to Janet now.
Lovely, thanks Martin. So the next thing we're going to look at is some of the products that PermaJet offer us, because these are ones that we can still use very nicely with our prints and sort of present them in another way again. The first one almost relates back to books. It's called the Snapshot, and it's effectively a portfolio that has a sprung spine. I think actually, Martin, you've got one there that we could have a look at, haven't you?
I have indeed, yes.
Brilliant,
So,
okay.
Talking about the spine, you can see there that it is a snapshot, so it clips closed. So as you can see, you can put pictures in there. I've got a series of semi-abstract pictures in. And when you want to change it, you just pull it back like that.
Excellent. Excellent.
And so there's the images there I've got. So I can rearrange those if I want to change them, put them like that.
Forget and put them in upside down.
Yep, almost certainly. So open it up again like
so
that.
You can see the spring opening up there. Yeah, brilliant.
There.
And it literally
closed, and there we are.
And they snap literally. Snap.
In a different order. That's a portrait one, but there's also a landscape one. This is a landscape. It works exactly the same. You can see the spine there. And so here we've got just a mixed selection of my pictures in there. So I've only got a few in that one, but you can put quite a lot, because you see by the spine, you can probably get, I don't know, 20 or 30 sheets in, depending on the type of paper. And you can use any paper, of course, for these. I've used art papers for these, and I've used well, art paper for the other one, as it happens. But you can use anything.
Yeah,
so that's Snapshots.
It's actually quite a casual way to make books if you don't want to go to the bother of crafting them as such. And I mean, PermaJet do a range of sizes from A5 up to A3 plus, and they have different orientations. So as Martin's shown you, there's landscape, there's portrait, they even do a square one, and you can have them on black or cream. So it's quite versatile, and it does give you the opportunity to put your prints out and have them on display rather than back into the computer again. So for this particular webinar, PermaJet are offering us a special offer. So this is, let's get this a little bit right. So in the Snapshot, they are offering to put double-sided paper, and a Snapshot. They've already got them on special offer on their website, but for this webinar, we're going to have an additional 20% offer. So double-sided paper, so that will work really well in the Snapshot, and that's A4, the double-sided paper, or the A4 is what I've got. It's probably available in other sizes as well. And then the Snapshot in cream or black, an A4 cover, and you get your 20% discount. So I think that's really quite an easy, nice way of making a book. Now we're going to go on to the products which Martin and I have both quite fallen in love with, in truth. And it's a new frame that PermaJet are offering, a block, an acrylic block, and it's magnetic. So I've got images, whoops, get her up the right way, get her up the right way. So it's got the image, as you can see, on both sides, but it quite easily comes apart into two pieces to change the images, or better still, you could use your double-sided in that. Now, my one here is on titanium paper, and I think the titanium paper works really well in these blocks, but I think you've got a bit of different size, Martin, and a different way of using, slightly different way of using it.
I have, and it's this is an A4 size, so we've got the large one here, and you can see that it's the same idea with the gap in the center, so you can open it, close it. In this case, I'm rather than using the landscapes and the arty pictures for which I've got on my walls, I've used this something for more personal. So this picture, for instance, was taken when my wife and I went to America a few years ago, and we came up from Monument Valley where it was extremely hot, and a couple of days later in Crested Butte we woke up to 10 inches of snow. So it was a bit of a shock. So it brings back lovely memories, and of course right when we're recording this it's really hot, so it's quite nice to have that. So I have it turned out that way, but when my wife comes along, she turns it this way because we've got a family picture in it. So this is my wife's family and the dog, so that's nice. So we can turn it around. I can have that one, my wife has that one, so whoever's happened to be in the room, we turn it around. So it's quite a nice way to put personal pictures, and of course, as Janet said, you can just pull it open, change it, done so easily, no problems at all. It was great.
The thing about the I totally agree, you can use any paper, and I think you've used, what did you say, used oyster or something in that?
I used oyster for those, yes. It's just a sort of easy
paper to use,
easy printer to use. So
yes, exactly. Mine, as I say, is on the titanium luster, and that paper has got a metallic finish to it. The gloss or the luster both have the metallic finish, and inside this it really twinkles. It's really quite interesting what it does to it, because it seems to, I don't know, I don't want to say magnifies the twinkles, but it certainly enhances the twinkles. So I've been quite impressed with that. And fortunately, for me right now, PermaJet are going to do us a special webinar offer on a bundle. And if you buy an A4 pack of titanium luster or titanium gloss, which we haven't talked about today, but it just is, as the word says, slightly glossier than the luster paper, then you can have a free A5 block. Now mine was in A5, Martin's is in A4. So you get a block that's an A5 size, and you'll have your luster paper to print and put in there. I'm really into this now, and I think I'm going to make some of these as Christmas presents, because the block is not that expensive, even when you're not getting it for free with your paper. And I just think every year I like to make a photographic present for some of my friends and relatives. And I think this year it's going to be A5 blocks with some of my prints in it. And if they don't like my prints, after all, they can take it out and stick their own inside. So, you know, they win both ways that way. So I hope that we've helped you to think today a little bit more about printing, how you can get those prints out of the computer and use them in different ways, and perhaps venture out into either thinking about books or looking at, as I say, these lovely acrylic blocks that are on offer. Take advantage of the offers, because it's going, gone, isn't it, with special offers. And we want to take questions from you. So to do that, if you would like to type into the chat box, then Martin and I are very, very happy to try and answer your questions. I hope that we won't get cornered in any way, shape or form, but we'll do our very best to answer them for you. So get asking. Here we are. We're waiting for you.
Yeah, look forward to hearing from you in a few minutes.
Hi, right, here we are, waiting for your questions. Would you like to read them out for us? Oh, by the way, the questions should go into the Q&A section of the webinar. I actually said the chat, didn't I? But the Q&A is the right place for your questions, as it suggests. So, fire away.
Hi, both of you. Thank you so much for that. So our first question here is from Peter. Do you need an offset for the spine of the Snapshot? If so, how much?
I didn't.
No, you don't. Basically, no, you can just use. I just used the standard A3 paper and A4 paper, and I used in Lightroom fit to size and just put it in. So it's got a small white border around the edge. Obviously, if you wanted to make it edge to edge, you'd have to use a bigger paper. And in the exact size, but that's rather wasteful. So I'm quite happy with the single white edge, but there's no offset needed, no.
Okay, so the next question is from Sonny, who says, I find that using thick art paper in the snap folder is very difficult to turn the pages. I'm thinking of using adhesive side strips, which would provide better flexibility to turn the pages. Could you share your thoughts, please?
Have you thought about slightly scoring the thicker papers? You saw when I was demonstrating the book that I didn't get a very good fold on the portrait white paper, but I have now got a tool. I have a tool. It's sort of a bone knife, it's called. It's used in craft quite a lot. As you can see, it's sort of got a little bit of a broad edge. And if I now use that to score the paper a little and then fold it very carefully and make sure that I use the side of the bone to actually flatten it down, I can get a much better fold than I did on that first book using one of these tools. And I think if you're having trouble getting them to turn properly in the Snapshot, just scoring it in the right place, obviously, on each page might help that to move over and to turn a little bit better. But I think the Snapshots have the tendency, don't they, Martin, to sort of do as they say and snap shut. So it's not quite such a lay flat book as the one that I demonstrated you as a handmade book. Anything else to add?
I think that the very thick papers aren't ideal for the snapshot. I think if you work with a bit thinner one, I think it does help. Certainly.
As ambassadors for PermaJet, PermaJet use them themselves, and they give us these books, and we've got all the papers printed with images of every paper in the books, actually. And it's quite interesting because obviously you start off with the digital papers, which are the lighter weight ones, and you move to the heavier ones towards the back. And that's when you start sort of thinking, oh, it's a bit tough here. In fact, when I was using them to demonstrate at club talks, for example, I would quite often pop the snapshot bit and take the print out so that people could see that particular print without the problem of it snapping on us again. But there's ways around it, and I'm quite sure, as I say now, I would probably use my little bone tool thing and just score it very slightly.
Thanks, Jay. Just to let everybody know that we do actually offer a PermaJet paper scorer, which is $13.95. And what we can do is when we send out the recording of the webinar, we can include a link into that for everybody. So anyone who's interested, you can go over to our website and have a look at that. So hopefully that should be helpful for everybody.
Sounds like I should get one of those.
We'll send you one, Jay. I have a question here from John. He's asked what printers you both use.
I've got an Epson P600, which prints up to A3+, and I think, Martin, you've got an Epson too, haven't you?
I've got an Epson P600, same printer.
Okay, the 600 goes up to A3+, and then there's an 800 that you can do A2. It's one of these printers that has different cartridges for PKMK, they call them. So it's matte or photo paper. And so you swap, or you don't have to take them in and out, I should add, but you swap physically not physically, what do I mean, Martin? In the software, you set the software up so it will print with the correct paper, correct ink for that particular paper. And you can read the PermaJet codes to know whether it should be printed on an MK or a PK. You were going to say something else to that, Martin?
I was only going to say the only problem with that is it does use a lot of ink because it goes through a whole cleaning cycle every time you change. True. So I tend to use the gloss setting for almost everything. So I rarely change it. Yes, I do. Even with matte paper, I use the same setting. So I think it works fine. So.
Okay, well, there's a good tip for you. Print everything off.
If you're always using matte, then just stick with matte ink, and if you're using mainly gloss, you stick with the gloss ink. But personally, I just use the one ink, and it works fine for me. So.
And do you get, because you're using the, let's say, the PK ink for photo paper on a matte, do you then have to get custom profiles to make them work properly?
Yes, I get custom profiles anyway. So and you just make sure you use the ink which you use it on the profile, the ink which you're going to print with. So
okay.
And that works fine. Yes.
Yeah, there's the difference. You see, Martin gets custom made profiles, whereas I use the generic ones. So by keeping mine as it should be, if you like, I use my matte ink on my matte papers. I can then use PermaJet's standard generic profiles, and I don't have to bother to send off for the bespoke ones, the custom ones. So slightly two different ways of working, but we've both got the same machine.
Okay, so the next question is from David. David said, is that a light grey mount in Martin's white square frames, or is it a white lost in transmission?
In the small frames, it's a sort of off-white, really. The frame came, the inner frame came with the mount. It came with the frame. Sorry, the inner mount came with the frame. So I just simply leave that in and change it. So it's a sort of off-white, slightly more whitish than off-white, more whitish than grey, but it's not quite pure white, I don't think. I haven't got one here, so I'm actually in France at the moment on holiday, so I'm borrowing a friend's Wi-Fi, so I can't show you anything. but it's almost white, but not quite a pure white.
Okay, we've also had another question from Justin, which says, where do you get your white frames?
Aha, yes. You know, I was thinking that just before I started, and I can't remember immediately, but I bought them off the internet, and I can't remember the name. I sort of just searched for frames online. I think it may actually been called Frames Online, but something like that. In fact, I might be able to find it for you in a moment. If we carry on chatting, if I can find it, I'll let you know. I'll look at my phone and see.
I have to say that I find IKEA really good for frames. They're good prices, and you know, you can, when you fancy another one, you can go back and match it. Having said that, though, I ran foul because I bought a set of 10, and they were a sort of anthracite colour. They weren't quite black. And then 2 years probably later, I decided I wanted some more for an exhibition, and they'd given up doing the anthracite colour. So I came unstuck. So if you think you like it and it's slightly different, buy loads of them. So we'll take the next question.
I have just found it. Oh, hang on a second. I lost it again now. Frame. Yes, it's a company called Best for Frames. Best, and then number 4, and then Frames. So that's who I got them from. That was a couple of years ago.
Excellent.
My next question here is from Carol. Hi, I wish to make a book for my ARPS, but looking at doing a stitch book on wildfire. Which paper would you suggest for this?
It depends what paper your work looks best on, is the answer. So don't be totally dictated by the fact that you're making a book. If you used, I mean, you're talking about fire, if you use the titanium, for example, it's got this lovely luster to it, this lovely metallic look, and that punches quite well, because if you're doing a stitched book, then you need something that's going to punch relatively easily, because you're not doing very well. You do a little bit of folding, but not much. You're just slightly folding it just to help it turn over. So think about the right paper and how you want it to look. Do you want to use double-sided, or do you just want one picture on each turn of the page? So there's several things to consider there, but there is no right answer, I'm afraid.
So we've got a question from Patricia, which I'm actually going to answer. It's, can the blocks be fixed on the wall? No, they can't. They just they stand up on the mantelpiece or on the desk, wherever you want to put them, but they can't be fixed on the wall.
They stand quite firmly. Obviously, they're a little bit more stable on the long edge than they are on the upright edge, but I find that they stand quite firmly. I've never had one fall over. I don't know about your big one. Is that any more vulnerable, Martin, or not?
No, it's got quite a broad base to it. I mean, it's quite thick anyway.
Yes.
You put it quite thick. So it seems to stand very well. I think if you put it on a table which is likely to get bumped, then yes, it would fall over. But you put it in, say, a window, or in my case, I just put it on top of a bookcase. It works fine. Yeah, never problems. You can also lay it flat, couldn't you, on a centre table, I suppose.
Yeah. Oh, it would make quite a nice tea tray, wouldn't it? Sorry, PermaJet.
A question here from Philip. Do PermaJet produce a style of baryta paper for printing mono images?
There is a fibre baryta paper for mono, a mono. It's actually called that. Have you used that paper, Martin?
No, I haven't. But I have to say, I'm not particularly a mono worker. Most of my work is in colour.
Yes.
So I haven't really no.
Yeah, you're talking tonight to two colour workers, so we haven't really experimented with that particular paper. I mean, we get the papers when they first come out to test, and I remember testing it at the time and being perfectly happy with it. But as I say, it's not a paper I've used very much. I actually like Distinction for mono work, because it's got a very nice quality about the paper. All the fibre-based papers have got a lovely quality to them. But the mono, as I say, works well. Does PermaJet come back in here? Do you do a tester pack on the fibres, on the FBs?
Yep, we do have a test pack for the fibre-based range, and that does include obviously the FB monogloss barometer, which you've mentioned, and the distinction.
Okay, so there's the answer. If you're unsure, buy one of the test packs. They're quite useful to, as I say, if you're trying to work out what papers work for your work, a test pack's a good idea. But here's a hint: when you get them, because it's inside the box, I can't remember, you get 3 of each of the types of paper. Turn them over and very gently with a soft pencil, write on the back what they are. Because once you take one out of the box, you get in a muddle as to whether you've got, oh, did I use the mono or did I use this, that, and the other? So as I say, when I first did it, I made a mess and I more or less wasted a whole box full because I couldn't remember what papers were which. These days I could probably tell by looking at them. So just label them slightly on the back and then buy the test papers and work it out is a good way of going.
Okay, so I have a question for you, Janet, from Richard. When you mount your printed pictures onto additional card or paper, what adhesive do you use that is recognised as archival glue?
For the actual making of the book, it's just ordinary PVC stuff. Okay. When I go into the book, I'm printing onto the page now. The first couple I showed you, I was using art paper and making the books and then just sticking in my prints. But I now actually print directly onto the paper. You sort of learn in stages, if you like. And it was easier to learn with paper and make my mistakes on cheaper art paper to start with, rather than printing them straight onto the page and working out how to make the template, etc. So so archival, obviously whatever papers you want that are archival papers. If you really, really want to make it last a long time, then use the really good papers. But then you get into the problem, of course, of making sure that they score and turn well. So it's a sort of a bit of a balancing act as to which ones you're going to use for that purpose. Does that answer the question okay?
Yeah, I think so.
I have a question here from Patricia. She says that she has the same printer as both of you, but finds it doesn't handle the smaller sheets of paper well, such as the pre-cut greetings cards. She mentions that she gets scuffing on the edges and the spines.
Yep. I've had the same problem. It is a problem with them, and I totally accept that. I usually print mine slightly smaller, and quite often end up taking the guillotine out and just chopping the edges off. I don't know how you overcome it, Martin.
Yeah, I do find that's a problem. It seems to work fine for a while. Right at the minute, I've got a major problem because it won't take any paper. So I'm before I came away, I couldn't print anything at all. So I'm a bit annoyed about that. Yeah. So, but yes, he does do that, and sometimes it puts black bits on. Printers seem to work fine for a couple of years, and after that, they seem to have a built-in obsolescence, which is a bit of a price to them. Shouldn't happen. Yeah. It seems to be love-hate relationship with printers.
Yes, exactly. The other way to consider it is not to buy the packs of cards, which are fine. I've used them loads. But another way that I have done it is I've used A3 paper and printed 2 cards to every piece of A3 paper. So I get quite big cards out of it. You could probably do more if you do them A4 and then cut it up afterwards, because then you don't have that problem. I mean, I've got a really good guillotine and a really good cutting system, so I can cut them just as beautifully using that. A little bit more time, of course, but it does overcome this problem of the ink on the smaller pieces of paper.
Yes, I also print for cards. I do a lot of cards, and I print 2 on an A4 sheet normally. And I haven't set them in Lightroom, because Lightroom is fantastic for printing. You just set up a template, when you first do it, just print it on a rubbish bit of paper and see what it looks like. And then fine tune it. You save it, and then all you do is put the picture in and print it. And it's so easy. But I always print. I don't think I very rarely print on A5. I nearly always print on A4 and just do 2 at a time. So, and then I don't have a special cutting system like Janet. I just have a craft knife and a ruler, which works fine.
Okay.
So we have another question. Sorry, bear with me. So someone has asked if the previous webinar that you mentioned at the start, Janet, is available to watch. So I will just jump in and say yes, that one is actually on the PermaJet YouTube channel, which you can find linked on the PermaJet website. So you'll be able to go and watch that one, which is all about printing. And then another question. So Graham has asked, hi, how do I get the image on the screen to print on the paper the same? I have calibrated my screen and I use paper profiles. I have tried to increase the printer brightness to compensate for the difference in backlighting on screen versus the front lighting on the paper. My printer is a Canon Pro 100S.
Okay, well, to start with, remember you're using 2 different formats, because when you see something on screen, the light is coming from behind it, behind your image. And so therefore you are never, ever going to make it look precisely how it looks on the screen. You're now printing on a piece of paper and the light is falling on that surface rather than, as I say, coming through the image effectively. So be kind to yourself, because you can get a good replication, but you will never precisely match it, because it's just two different products, 2 different surfaces. I don't know anything about the Canon printers. Personally, when I'm printing, I tend to put a small curve on my print as I'm about to print it, because I know I work on a Mac and it's a very bright screen, even though I've got it calibrated and turned down a little bit. And I know that it will come out a little bit better if I adjust the curve, and I just got to know how much to ooch that curve to make it print as well as it possibly can. So what about you, Martin? How do you overcome the problem?
I use a PC, and one of the things I always tell people is like you just said, is to cut down the brightness. Screen makers like to make it as bright as possible, but it's unrealistically bright. I can't remember exactly, but I think I'm on something like 60% brightness. And that way, I know I can print it, and the print comes out exactly the same as on the screen. Now, I say exactly the same. It isn't exactly the same, as Janet said. One's projected and one's reflected light. But in terms of what I look at the screen, I can look at it at print, and it is, as close as I can get it. So I don't need to think, do I need to make it lighter or darker, provided I process it right, of course. But I've got a profiled screen. I've had a lot of experience with printing. So I think one of the key things for me is actually looking at histogram, because when you're looking at a screen, you can't look at a screen and know whether you've got a good white or not, because your eyes adjust to it. So the only way you can tell whether you've got a good white or a good black is to look at the histogram, and that's always my absolute essential before I print anything. I check the histogram, because does it have the brightness that I want? And if it doesn't have that, on the times I print it and I'm not happy, I used to go back to the images and think, oh, blow it, I didn't check the histogram. And that's why my print looks a bit dull. So histogram is the absolute key for me for all printing.
Yeah, I have to say that because I'm doing lots and lots of layer work, and then when I flatten my image, it goes flat, literally. The lighting on all those various images that I've put together goes really, really flat. And I always use the histogram to correct that before I even start to think about printing it. So the histogram, as Martin says, is really quite key to making sure that you've got a nice lively picture to start with. So just keep practicing. Buy lots of PermaJet paper while you do it.
I've got, I'll round up with one last question, but just before I do that, just to answer a couple of people's questions here, a reminder that the offers are running for a week. It's just the 15% off the PermaJet range, which is running until 10 p.m. tonight. Just quickly as well, I've had a question asking about our carbon footprint and how what we're doing to be eco-friendly. On our website, on our main page, if you scroll to the footer, there is a section on sustainability there, and that can answer all your questions for you. And then, yes, one last question. We have options on landscape, please.
Options in what way? Options for which paper we use?
I assume paper.
I assume
yes.
paper choice.
Let's
okay.
go paper.
Again, I don't know about you, Martin, but it would depend on what I was printing. You know, if I'd been up and to a beach and I'd got a beautiful soft evening light, very delicate shades and colours, I might well put that on a portrait white paper or a matte paper. But on the other hand, if I went to I don't know, a well-lit woodland, I would choose a different paper. So I don't think, again, there is a right and a wrong answer. It's the right paper for the right image. What about you, Martin? Do you have any favourites for landscape?
I totally agree that, but I would say if you want a rule of thumb, I would certainly say portrait white for delicate landscapes. And I do a lot of delicate landscapes. And something like distinction for a strongly coloured where colour and contrast is really important. It's a bit like the polar bear. I use distinction because although it's only one colour there, I really wanted the brightness of the ice to come out. Distinction is beautiful for that. So if I chose two papers for my landscape pictures, I don't think I'd be unhappy with portrait white and distinction.
I always maintain that we need to have in our cupboard 3, max 4 papers, and you then you learn those papers for starters, and then you know, oh yes, this one's going to go on distinction, this one's going to go on titanium luster. They really are. Titanium luster is really very good for sea and sparkly things. Really works well. So hone them down and get yourself into a position of owning 3, max 4 papers that you really get to know, and then your printing will improve no end. And you don't have so much choice either.
I'll just add briefly on that. I said that portrait white and distinction really for the high quality prints. Yep. But for everyday prints, I would say Matte Plus and Oyster, because they're cheap papers. You can afford to make lots of mistakes. If you're starting out in printing, I'd say those are the papers you want to use. Get to know those, get to understand printing on those. Then when you want to make that special print for the wall or for an exhibition, use like Distinction or Matte Plus. If you add those 4 papers, you won't go far wrong, frankly. And maybe the odd paper for something special like the titanium, but that's not an everyday paper. So you need something. You need a reason to use that. But Matte Plus, Oyster, portrait white, and Distinction. If I didn't have anything else, I'd be quite happy with those 4.
Yep, I reckon that's a good recommendation. So thank you very much for this evening. There may still be questions that we haven't answered for you. And what PermaJet will do is they will take a copy before they close the webinar. And if there are questions that they can answer for you, then they'll come back and give you a response by email probably tomorrow. And I believe that there's also going to be a follow-up in so much that you'll be able to re-watch this as a recording as well. So thank you very much. Thank you, Martin, for joining us from your holiday in France. And have a good time and take care, everybody. Keep plastering yourself with the sun lotion, and keep the camera handy in case something pops up that you want to take a good shot of. So thank you very much and good night.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Bye. Good night.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye.